Hey everybody, in this video we're going to talk about how to use drum triggers to send MIDI information into Ableton. We'll also talk about how to simultaneously use drum triggers with envelope follower to create dynamic and interactive electroacoustic instruments. So let's get started. First of all, just to tell you about the drum trigger I'm using today, this drum trigger is by Percussion or by Sunhouse. And this is an older version. I just noticed the other day that it seems like they've teamed up with Evans, and so they have a new model that's out. I imagine they probably work very similarly, though some of the connections are a little bit different. But this version, you have the sensor that connects to the drum very easily. They have a nice little connection mechanism that does great. And then there's an XLR, you just use an XLR cable to take it to your interface. It does require phantom power. Then you need to use the sensory percussion software. So I am there now, and this allows you to get the most out of your drum sensor. The first thing we need to do is set up some audio settings. We're going to go to audio device settings up here at the top. I've got my Scarlett set as the output and the input. You'll need to select whatever interface you're using. And then really importantly, here in the MIDI outputs, you want to select your IC driver bus. And if you aren't seeing that as an option for you, then you probably need to set that up if you're using a Mac. There's a bunch of tutorials out there that can help you set up your IC driver bus, or if you ask in the comments, I can point you in the right direction. Yeah, that essentially will send MIDI information from different pieces of software. So in this case, we're sending MIDI information from Sensory Percussion software to Ableton. So now I've got all that set up, we're ready to go. So just so you know, on this second track, you're seeing my voice come in. We're not going to be using that, so don't worry about it. Here is drum one. I've already selected snare. If you click the drop down, you have a bunch of different options, snare, tom. You can add a new snare. Let's add a 14-inch snare. There we go, new snare. There we go. All right, so now I'm working from a blank snare drum map here, and these are all the zones that I can teach the sensor to recognize. Based on my experience using acoustic drums, typically I'll do no more than 2 zones. If you're using a mesh head, then you can probably get more out of it, but based on my experience, I usually stick to a couple different ones so we don't confuse the sensor. But let's start by programming the center. So what I'm going to do is select the center, and then I'm going to click Learn, and now I'm just going to play. There we go. So there is my center. It looks like I need to activate the pad. To do that by right-clicking, click Activate. There we go. So now it's on and ready to go. The next thing I want to do is set my threshold. So that's probably about as quiet as I'm going to play. So honestly, that's probably good where it is. Maybe I'll bring it up just a little bit. So I missed one of those. I'll bring it back down just a little bit. All right, very good. I'm going to click Save. So I've now taught the drum where the center of the drum is. I'm also going to have it learn where the rim is. So we're going to use rim shoulder, so it's referring to rim shoulder and rim tip. So shoulder of stick versus tip of stick is what that's referring to. We're going to do shoulder. I'm going to click Learn. I'm just going to play a bunch. Make some different dynamics. All right. I'm going to activate the pad. Right click, activate pad. And it's recognizing the 2 different zones. There was no confusion there, so we're good to go. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over here into the MIDI tab. Click the MIDI tab, and for center C1, let's leave that as is. But I want to get rid of that. I want to get rid of cross stick. I want to get rid of rim shot center. Get rid of that. Get rid of that, and this is the one I want. I want that to be D1. These are my MIDI notes that I'm going to be using. All right, very good. So I've got rim shoulder sending D1 MIDI note, and I've got center of drum sending C1 MIDI note. So, and I've got my zones trained. So now I'm going to just minimize my Sensory Percussion software. You can't close it. If you close it, then it won't work. So I've got that closed now. I'm going to turn my master volume up on my Ableton session. So I have pre-made a instrument in Simpler, just using some simple voice samples that I put together about 2 minutes ago. So right here, slice 1 sounds like this. It's being played by MIDI note C1, and then slice 4 right here says Jason. And that is being played by D1. If you'll remember, back in the Sensory Percussion software, I mapped center drum to C1 and then rim to D1. So let's see if that worked. And there we go. So now I've got my zones playing. I'm sending MIDI information to Ableton, and that is then playing a couple samples that I've created using Simpler. Of course, you can add whatever samples you want, and you can mess with them however you want to, using any of this stuff and audio effects and plugins and all kinds of other fun stuff. But this is just how you kind of get it to work. Okay, so something else you can do that's really fun is to use your drum trigger with envelope follower on an audio track in Ableton, and then that can make your simpler instrument that you're playing with the drum trigger more dynamic and interactive. So let's do that. First, we're going to create an audio track. Again, that's Command T. Then I'm going to go over here to Audio Effects. I'm going to do a search for Envelope Follower, which is right there. I'm going to double click with my track selected, and now Envelope Follower is down in the track. I'm going to record enable my track, and I'm going to set the monitor setting to auto, and then I'm going to turn, I'm going to mute the track, because essentially I want the signal so I can use that data to do fun things to the simpler instrument, but I don't want to hear the noise coming through the drum trigger into Ableton. It's just unnecessary. Yeah. So let's start setting our envelope follower so that we can then use that data elsewhere. So I'm just going to start playing. The rim usually sends a hotter signal, so that's where I'm going to play. So you can start to see that signal coming in now. I'm going to adjust the gain in envelope follower. I don't want to get it too crazy hot, but that's pretty good. That's pretty dynamic, so I can play soft and everywhere in between. So that's going to send a lot of information. The rise kind of like adjusts like how quickly the transients go up. For drums, I don't usually use that. I usually use the fall. So the fall is going to open up how long you will kind of stay at a higher level in envelope follower. And from my experience, having that set to be a little bit higher lets your listener kind of hear whatever it is you're doing with envelope follower a little bit better. So that's what I've got. Now you've got this thing here, map. So we're going to map. We're going to click map. I want to go over to Simpler, and I'm going to map the transposition of my Jason sample. So now, if I record enable both tracks, and if you're using exclusive arming, then you need to hold Command and click. If it's non-exclusive, then you can just click and they'll both arm. Now I should be able to hear a more interactive instrument. All right, there you go. So there's the drum triggers. So if we go back to envelope follower, you have a bunch more options for mapping. So if I hit this button here, it's going to open up plenty more that I can map. So just to show you one more, let me click map, and now I'm going to click the panner on this track. So now the louder I play, should move around your stereo field a little bit. So there's a little bit of fun things you can do with drum triggers, Simpler, and envelope follower. All right, the last thing I'd like to share with you is how to use your drum triggers in conjunction with some MIDI tools and software instruments. So I've got a MIDI track here. The first thing I want to do is put a wavetable on there. I'm going to go over to Instruments, There's wavetable. Double click. So now when I hit the drum, I've got a wave. I'm going to move it up to like that. Oh yeah. Okay, and so now I'm going to add some MIDI effects. So let's get rid of that. We're going to add random, and we are going to add a scale. So now if I turn the chance of my randomized MIDI note tool up to 100%, that should play a chromatic scale. In random order, of course. I can also do this. So adjusting that setting, make it ascend the scale instead of it being randomized. I personally like randomized usually. Now in your scale tool, right now it's chromatic, so essentially you have C, C sharp, D, E, F, G, just kind of going up like this. So let's say maybe a pentatonic scale. So I'm going to go C and C. For example, if I play C, MIDI note, it's going to play C. If I play C sharp, MIDI note, you're going to hear a C. If I play D, you're going to hear a D. If I play D sharp, now you're going to hear a D. Hit an E, you're going to hear an E. Yeah, so it's a little confusing. And so then F, then G, then A, and now pentatonic scale. So some fun you can have with MIDI tools, and of course I'm just scratching the surface. So get in there, mess around, see what you can come up with. And now I just want to share a couple recordings of ways that I've used drum triggers over the last couple years. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you got some out of the video, and all the best. Thanks.